to the shop. Today's little project is a little bit different. You may remember that bank that I made the plug for, and it's missing a wheel. So today we're actually going to cast ourselves a new wheel out of resin. So I have kind of all the supplies that I need to do that. I already made a trial mold of just a little center cap because that does remove. I'm going to try to cast it with everything intact. And all this stuff that I got here, I ordered from Micromark, which I've ordered from before. And they're a very good company, they have a lot of stuff. If you're into scale modeling or anything like that, it's kind of the place to get a lot of your supplies. So we'll take a quick peek at their catalog because there's just a couple of things in here that I found interesting. And then we'll get on to making the mold for this thing. Okay, so this is the part that we're attempting to duplicate, is this wheel, and it is permanently attached to this axle, so I'm gonna have to leave it on that, and that kind of helps us out a little bit when we put it in there. I've already, this center hub here is removable, and I did pull it out just to make a small casting rubber mold of it, which I did, and that came out perfectly fine. That's just in case. I'm gonna try to make a mold of this with that intact. Otherwise there's a kind of a groove that it fits in. I would have to fill in that groove, otherwise the rubber molding compound will get in there and make it impossible to remove this. Now on the back side of this is another little kind of divot with a metal tab in there. That's what actually holds everything together, and I'm going to have to fill that in also. You can take hot glue and fill that in. I'm just going to take a piece of electrical tape and block it off with that. That should be more than enough. Otherwise you won't be able to remove this from the mold. Now you do have to consider draft in the part that you're molding, so your vertical sides have to be angled a little bit for you to be able to remove this from the mold. Now this small little raised area here, this vertical area, I'm not too worried about that. We should have plenty of clearance in there for us to pull it out in such a small area. The actual wheel itself has a natural draft to it because it's a round surface, and we're going to do a split casting. We're going to do a half and half, so half of this is going to be molded on one side of the mold, the other half is going to be molded on the other, and we're going to key them together. Now what I'm going to be using is, to make the mold, is from Micromark, the 1-to-1 mix silicone rubber, 30-minute cure time on this. So you get about 6 or 7 minutes of pot time in this, and 30 minutes for it to fully cure. And this is the 1-to-1 mix. They also have ones that you mix by weight, 1 to 10 or something around there. But this 1-to-1 mix is great for the small parts, and it's really quick. And the resin I'm using is the high performance resin that they have. I think this is the slow dry one. This takes about a half an hour to fully cure, and it's super thin. It's really watery, and it's really easy to get the air bubbles out, and that's what we're using. Plus I also picked up one of their mixing sets just so I can mix by volume. Now Micromark is a pretty cool company. This is the catalog they sent when I ordered this stuff. And if you're a model maker or anything like that, you guys probably know about it, but they have a lot of interesting stuff in there, from airbrush accessories to small tools, sanding sticks and stuff in here, you know, pliers, all kinds of benders, and to bend tubing in small sheet. It's not the cheapest thing in the world, but quality tools they have in here. Now they also have, if I can remember what the hell page it was on, which I probably should have marked it before I went into here. They also have, for any of you guys that are thinking of getting a small mill, they do sell a version of the small mills, and they have a tooling package also with it. These seem to be a little bit better built just by picture-wise than, say, a Harbor Freight version of this machine. Has true inch dials, and it also, a lot of these have digital readouts, so digital readout accessories for it. And here's some a few tooling packages, and they do have a small 7x16 lathe, which you can also get a digital readout to put on the hand wheels themselves. I think these still have the plastic gears. I'm not sure. I thought they sold a version that had the metal gears in the back, or not. But these are a little bit more expensive than the other ones. I mean, you're looking at, for the little lathe, you're looking at $894, and for the mill, you're looking at $792 for the mill. So, I mean, just for comparison sakes for you guys that are looking for a lathe or mill of that class type, or the small guys, just take a look into them. They might be something you want, might not be, but just another option that's out there. They also have a full line of small and micro drill presses and things along that line. So pretty cool company. So anyway, like I said, I had already made a molding mold of the inside hub of this, and I just actually used this as my shell for the mold, and put the part flat on a piece of plastic, put this over it, pour the rubber compound in there, and let it harden. So we may or may not need to use this depending on how this comes out. So I want to do a little bit of prep with this first. I want to clean it all up, and I definitely want to block that off before we start mixing up the casting compound and making a nice mold for this, or the molding compound rather, and making a mold of this. So let me get some tape and seal this area up nice, make sure we're all clean, we got no big chunks. There are some chunks taken out of this. This is rubber, but it's a really hard rubber, so I don't have any mold release. So I think that the hardness of this rubber, I'm hoping it doesn't stick to this silicone rubber in here. We're going to give it a shot and see what happens. Worst case scenario, I can mix up some sort of mold release to use on this. And there are a couple of rips in this just from being kicked around, and probably from the original casting of this rubber casting. So let's clean this up and we'll start our mold. Okay, so this is the pattern that we want to use, which is the original wheel. Now back here there was a hole with a metal stud. I covered that up with tape because we don't want the casting rubber to be caught in that when we try to remove this from the mold. So what I did is I put a hole in a popsicle stick here, so that way we can hang it in our mold box, which is just a box that I sealed up all the cracks with tape. You can use anything. A lot of people like to use Legos so that they can stack them up to the certain height that they want. So I want like a 1/4 inch on the bottom, so I'm just going to basically push this down to where about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch or so on the bottom, and we're nice and level. So that looks pretty good there, if you can see in there. Plus I have plenty of room on either side to pour the casting rubber, and I also have plenty of room to be able to put registration pegs for when we split this. So I'm going to leave it like that. Now I don't know exactly how much rubber I'm going to need in here. So if this was a sealed container, what you could do is put your part in there and fill it up with water, and then measure how much water you have in there, and then mix the proper amount of molding compound, molding rubber, to do that in there. So we're just going to take our best guess here, and we're going to do we'll go with, say, 3 ounces by volume, and see how that goes. If I do need to mix a little bit more, not a huge thing. So this is basically a 1-to-1 mix. So I'm going to do 1.5 ounces. Actually, should I do 1.5? Actually, you know what? Just so I don't screw myself, let's go and do 2 ounces of each. For a total of 4 ounces in volume. That way I know that that's definitely enough. And then once we do the other half, we can adjust for that. So basically what I want to do is only fill this up halfway, till it reaches halfway on this pattern here. So let me go, which is why I kind of have you this way, just so you can see me pouring this stuff out. So we'll do 2 ounces of the blue here. Now I've never done split molds before. I've only done, you know, just a regular open-ended mold. So this will be the first time. So we'll see how this works out. And this is the first time of me using these products here.
I used a different one the last time I did it, and then again, that was years ago. So there's 2 ounces. And then 2 ounces of the white stuff here. Okay, there's 2 ounces of that. So what we're going to do is take our stick and we're going to stir this up. Now this, just go slow to incorporate it. You want to try to keep as much air out of that as possible. A lot of people that are doing commercial casting and stuff like that will use a vacuum chamber to evacuate all the air out of it. That's not really necessary for what we're doing here. It's just a one-off, one-time casting, but and make sure you scrape down the sides. And we just want to mix it up until we see about one color. Now this takes 30 minutes to completely cure. It says 6-minute working time. You can get, I think this is the fast drying stuff. You can get one that dries faster, slower or faster. There are also retarders and accelerators for this. Alright, that all looks like one color. Now the problem we're going to have with the way this casting is, or the way this pattern is it's very flat on the bottom. So when we put it in and fill it up, it's going to want to trap air on the bottom here, which will then show up as raised little nubs on our final resin casting. So one way to get around that without any kind of crazy equipment like a vacuum chamber or anything is you can take a brush here and paint on a layer here on the very bottom. Get it nice and in there. In this way, by doing this, I'm kind of working out most of the bubbles. I think I'm going to get bubbles on the bottom no matter what I do, but this will help eliminate a lot of that, and a lot of the finishing work we'll have to do. I'm sorry, I was completely out of frame while I was talking, but this way here the bubbles can float up and dissipate out. Let's make sure that's all nice and covered. Right up until where that starts to round out. Okay. Alright. Alright, I think we got a thick enough layer on there so that now when I pour this in, it'll join to the rest of the silicone rubber, and hopefully we'll kind of minimize air bubbles. Now what you want to do is pour really high when a really thin stream. The thinner the stream the better, because what that will do is that will allow the bubbles to pop. The bubbles can't follow that stream all the way down, and you want to pour to the side of the casting and just let everything run underneath. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to lean you in so you can see. We're halfway up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something to these two corners here to act as a keyed surface. So that way that mold can only go in that one direction. Probably just get a couple of pegs and just drop them in place. Some people use marbles, some people actually cut these in after the fact. But I'm just going to put two little basically dimples on either side to key this. I just added a couple of wood dowels in there. Those are going to be our keyed marks. I'm not worried about sealing those or anything, because even if it rips when I pull it out, as long as we have a surface to key those, it doesn't matter to me. So that's fine. I can just take a knife and score along the edges and they should pop right out. Like I said, it's not a huge thing if I end up with a little tear there, as long as it doesn't go into that pattern, which it shouldn't. So we gotta let this cure for a half an hour, and then we'll be back to put on the top coat. Okay, so we got about 45 minutes cure time on that, and we're solid. I just got to remove those blocks. So I'll see if I can grab them with a pair of pliers and just pull them out. Well, they're actually in there pretty good, so let me just cut around them with an X-Acto knife, and I should be able to get around them. So give me a minute. Okay, so I just pulled off the popsicle stick there so you can see a little bit better. And they were my keyed slots. It's a little bit rough on one side here, but that's not a huge thing. So as long as we have a nice registration line, we're good to go. Now, you don't want to pour another bout of rubber right over this. You need a releasing compound. I don't have one, but what works pretty good is just regular dish soap. This is so that the actual molding rubber doesn't stick to itself, so you can actually separate the halves. The one thing that I know you want to do though is just make sure you coat it all nice and evenly, and also make sure you get up into the edges too, so you don't want the edges to seal. So I'm going to paint this in. Just a thin coat, doesn't need to be very much, and I'm going to try not to get any on, or not to get much of anything on the actual pot we're casting here, or we're molding rather. I want to make sure I get these squares really good. And again, I'm going about 1/4 of an inch up around the edge, just to make sure that I get that whole outside corner, so we have a good separation between them. Okay, so I'm going to mix up another batch. Okay, just mixing up our next batch here. Okay, so again, I'm going to choose a side. We're going to go into this corner here. Okay. There we go. And we'll just let that sit. Most of the air bubbles should come right up to the top. You can see them popping on their own there. Again, if you have some sort of vacuum system, obviously you can use that. Alright, so we'll give this about another half an hour, 45 minutes. We'll come down and we'll see if we can separate the two halves and demold this. Okay, it's been about another 45 minutes, so let's unwrap this thing and see what we got. Okay. Oops. So here's our split. Let's see if we can separate it. Split fine right there, so hopefully I can just follow that down without tearing anything. There it is. It's a little sticky, but as long as I gently work that seam, I should be able to get it right out. Okay. And there it is. Not too bad. I mean, I got some air bubbles in there. I was kind of expecting that. A few here and there. If you really want to go crazy, you can take a small amount of the rubber compound and just fill in the big ones, but I'm not really worried about that. I can just sand those off. They're not very deep, it's just air bubbles. This ring right here, I'll trim back a little bit. That's the ring that went inside of here. So I'll trim that back till it's nice and smooth, and then we can cut in our gates. So let me clean this up a little bit. I'll rinse off this soap here, and we'll see what we can do. Okay, so again, not bad. We got a few flaws here and there. The edge of this is a little more round than I want. It's not as crisp. That's probably just from getting a glop of soap in the corner there. And I just cut the actual pour hole, and this is a vent. And they'll key in together like that. So we'll pour out of here, and our air is going to escape through that hole. And I just cut a couple of pieces of plexiglass here to use as a hardback for this, so we can clamp the pattern together with some little clamps here. And we'll pour down this hole, and we'll let the air escape there. The good thing about using the silicone is you can kind of manipulate it a little bit and squeeze some of the air out of it. So what I want to do right now, oh, also that hole that was there, I just plugged with just a piece of metal rod. So what I'm going to do right now is just clamp these together in the position that I want here. Doesn't have to have a whole lot of pressure on it. We just want enough pressure to seal it. Make sure nothing comes out of the bottom there. Back you up a little bit. And I do have a little and of course that's not big enough. And we'll just throw this one right in the middle. And that should be more than enough. Now I do have a little funnel that'll fit this, so I'm going to go dig that out real quick. Okay, so now it comes time to mix the resin. Now I'm going to do this according to the instructions. I can't find my little funnel, so I put a little tray here in case this gets messy, and I am wearing gloves. This is equal parts, 1-to-1 mix of part A and part B for the resin. Now the instructions say to use a minimum of 1 ounce of each liquid, so we're probably going to be using near that, so I'm going to do 1.5 ounces of each for a total of 3 just to cover myself. So that's part B, so put in part A here. There's 1.5 ounces, and part B. One and a half ounces. So we have equal parts, and now we're just gonna mix her up. Now, according to the instructions, you have 2 minutes pour time and 30-minute set time. So I'm going to make sure we're nice and mixed. Now you can tint these. There are pigments and stuff you can buy for them. Obviously we're doing just whatever the regular here. It should clear. It should dry clear, not clear, but white, an opaque color. Okay, so we're thoroughly mixed. Try to get as much air out of there as possible. I'm going to pinch the end. I'm going to pour in through a pour hole. And dribbling down the side, but okay. Just a little squeeze on the bottom and the top, just making sure that there's no I got a little bit of overpour there, but that shouldn't be an issue because we can that should just peel right off of this. Be easier to have a funnel on this, but it's okay. Okay, so give ourselves about a half an hour, 45 minutes for that to dry. We'll look at it, make sure the top is nice and opaque. white looking, and then we'll separate the molds and see if we actually have a usable part. Okay, so it's been about 45 minutes. We should be cooked. Take all the stuff off. Peel the spill off. And see if we can crack this guy open. See what we got. There she is. Not too bad. I got a couple little divots, little air bubbles in there from the bubbles in the actual mold itself, with those, you know, those little rough spots in there. Formed a few bubbles here and there. But I can just get some surface primer and we should be able to fill a lot of that in. Now this takes about an hour or so to fully cure, so we're going to wait. Alright, so this has been left to harden overnight, and this is what we've come up with here. See if we can get it to focus. So you can see there's a few little air bubbles in there from the little holes in the mold. Like I said, not a huge thing. I'm not really worried about that. Here's the pour tab, and as far as the rest of it goes, it's pretty good. You can see this is where that piece of electrical tape was, which I can smooth that out. The resin it's basically just like plastic. It's sandable, it's paintable. The only thing is you want to prime this first. You can use a car primer, like a self-etching primer. You want a primer coat on this first, because regular model paints like the acrylic Tamiya and Model Master paints won't really want to stick to the resin. So I'm gonna just shape this up a little bit, cut these two gates off, clean up the mold seam here a little bit, give it a quick little sand, and then I'm gonna prime it and see how much it fills in those holes. If it needs if the holes look kind of like crap and there's one or two big ones here, I can just coat it a little bit more and fill those in with a nice I'm going to use Mr. Surfacer paint, and that'll fill in a lot of the imperfections, the smaller imperfections. Any of the bigger ones, if it really sticks out, you can take a little bit of Bondo and just fill that up. So in the meantime, let me go and clean this up. I'm going to drill this hole to fit the axle here, and we'll start painting it. Now another option too is you can actually pre-paint the mold. If you use, I believe enamels will work. I'm not sure acrylic will work, but what will happen is the paint will coat the mold, but it won't stick to the silicone rubber. But when you pour the resin in, the actual resin will bond with the paint, so when you open it up, you can actually take out a fully painted part. I didn't want to try doing that because I wanted the most chance of success with this, so we went with an unpainted surface. Plus this is going to be two different colors, because I need a gloss black in the middle and I need a flat black to simulate the tire. So let me clean this up and then we'll start painting it. Okay, so all I did was drill the hole in the back, and I used just a handheld pin vise for it, so I know I can get the depth nice and accurate, and I know I'm not going through. Now that's not the actual size of the axle, it's one size smaller, so I'm just having it on a brass rod to hold it to be able to paint it for right now. So I have my little swivel hobby vise here to paint it, and what I'm going to be priming it with is some Mr. Surfacer 1000. This is a pretty good paint for leveling out surfaces. It is white though, so you just have to be aware of that. So off camera I'm going to put a couple of coats on this and sand in between and prep it for our final coat. Okay, so there it is, and there's the original. Just so you know, I'm not bullshitting you. Hard rubber, hard plastic. Now, there's a secret to making realistic looking rubber tires out of a painted surface, and that is using these little guys. And these are basically pigments. It's just dried pigments. Picture it like your girlfriend's makeup. Same idea, just different colors. So like you got your blacks, your whites, tans, there are reds, grays, all different kinds of powders that you can do. And what you do is rub some of the white powder on there and let it sit in there, burnish it in a little bit with that brush, and then take some of the black and go over it. And it kind of deglosses everything, and it also makes it look like kind of a worn tire. This has been untouched. This is the tire that was on there. And you can see that it's a pretty damn close match to that. So now we got the Jeep and we installed our wheel. So this is the original and this is the replacement wheel. There is a little bit of a glossiness difference to it, just because this is painted plastic and this is rubber. So there is going to be a difference, but it overall looks pretty good. And there are the two original wheels there, and it sits pretty flush, no real wiggle in it, but these wheels on here aren't really in line with each other anyway. I mean, you can see the wobble in that. So again, a little bit of a different project here, and the casting didn't turn out too bad for my first 2-part mold. Obviously I did make some mistakes. I got a little bit more air bubbles in here than I wanted to. There are ways to get around that, like I said, if you use some sort of vacuum or a thing like that. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the way it came out. Now, I do have the metal to actually finally make the handle for the quick change tool post on the lathe there. So hopefully we can get to that next weekend before the holiday. And I do have some new tool acquisitions and things that I want to show on there. And I do have another viewer appreciation gift that I'm going to keep on there. So hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.